Today I'm going to be forging the last two pieces to the fireplace cookware set that I'm working on, and they are two different sizes of spoons. The smaller spoon on the bottom is made from one piece, and the larger spoon on the top is made from two pieces welded together the same way I did the spatula in the last video. And again, this video is just about forging the ends because the handles are going to be identical to what I did with the basic cooking fork video. I'm going to start by forging the smaller spoon, and I'm going to be making that out of 3/8 square bar, which is the same material that I've been using for the handles. The spoon shape needs to get started in some kind of a hollow form. A lot of people use a wooden stump or a block that has a depression carved in it. I'm using this simple ring that's just welded to a bar that I'm going to place in the vise. So you can also use a pipe that has well-rounded edges. You just want to make sure that the shape doesn't have anything sharp on the back that's going to dig into the spoon, because that's really hard to deal with later on. The blank for the spoon gets shaped by tapering off the tip so that that part of the spoon doesn't spread out too much, and then creating an offset at the back end of the spoon towards the handle, again, so that area is thinner and there's less material to spread out into a spoon. So what you're left with is kind of a boat-shaped profile that has the mass of the metal in the center of the spoon where it needs to be the widest, and then it tapers off to the two ends. So when you start fullering this shape out, it's just naturally going to form into a large circular pad, and you're going to be left with very little filing or grinding to get the final spoon shape. And you can see I've left the top face full width because I'm going to need that later when I'm making the handle. When you're shaping the spoon blank, the hammer needs to be small enough to fit inside the form. If you use a hammer that's too large, the forming die is going to act like a bottom fuller and drive marks into the back of the spoon blank that are going to be hard to hammer out or grind out later. I'm just using this form to sink the spoon down to the depth that I want. The actual shaping is going to be done at the anvil. And then the final stages of shaping the spoon before I move on to the rest of the handle is just to take a few light heats and slowly go over the entire bowl of the spoon and knock off all the scale and replace it with a very fine hammer texture. The larger spoon is assembled the same way I did the spatula with a cleft weld, only this time I'm using 1/4 by 3/4 as the spoon blank. And again, I'm using the 3/8 square bar for the handle. Here I'm starting to rough in the scarf for the cleft weld that I'm going to be using to join the handle to the blank. Because there isn't really much of a difference in dimension between the bar that I'm using for the blank and the handle, I'm not going to notch out the corners like I did for the spatula. I'm just hammering them down and drawing them out into a thin wedge shape. The rest of this welding process is identical to what I described in the video when I was making the spatula for this set. The profile of the large spoon is going to be quite a bit different than I used for the small spoon. It isn't going to be round like a ladle, it's going to be more egg-shaped. However, the process of forging the blank is exactly the same. I'm going to be leaving the full thickness of the bar where I want the widest part of the spoon, and then I'm going to be tapering the blank down on either side of that to just about the final thickness that I want for the spoon. So that'll give me very limited stretch in those areas and the maximum width where I want the spoon to be the widest, and that'll just again naturally kind of hammer out into the profile that I want. You also have to keep in mind the final dimensions of the spoon that you're after. This blank might seem quite long right now, but once I start spreading it out into a spoon shape, you'll see that it's actually a fairly good proportion. When you're making a long, slender shape like this, it's pretty easy to underestimate the amount of length that you need to start with, and then that'll wind up in a short, stubby spoon instead of the shape that you're after. Of course, if you do overestimate and you make the spoon a little bit longer than you had intended, well, that's a lot easier to deal with than trying to stretch material that just isn't there. The process of forging the spoon is identical to what I used for the smaller spoon, only here I have a larger chain length that I'm working on. But again, the form is basically just used to get the depth of the depression that I want in the spoon, and the actual shaping of the spoon is done on the flat face of the anvil. And then once again, the final shaping of the spoon is done with a series of really low heats, barely at a red heat, and that's below the scale forming temperature. So what that's going to do is knock off all the scale and produce a very fine hammer texture on the inside and outside of the spoon form. Hi, I'm Dennis, and thanks for watching. If you're interested in supporting this channel and you can spare $2.50 every month, click on the Patreon logo at the bottom of the screen. I'd really like to be able to expand the content of this channel and turn it into the best resource for anyone wanting to learn traditional crafts, but I need your help to get there. Thank you.